Okay, hello everyone. This is Dr. Cooper from your DQR 300 course. Today we're going to start in a series of lectures on how to use SPSS. Today you'll become familiar with working with SPSS data files, and hopefully this will help you with all of your statistical tests that you complete in future workshops. A couple goals here today. Our first goal here is to understand the different windows in SPSS, and I'll actually bring up SPSS for you guys to follow along. And our second goal is to understand the different functions of creating and changing and manipulating data as well. Specifically, we're going to look at the editor window and the output viewer in SPSS. It looks a lot like Excel, but it has two windows to help you navigate the tests that you complete. And using those two windows, you're going to learn how to type in data, not unlike Microsoft Excel. You're going to transform data, you're going to move around data, and learn a couple techniques that need to be inherent when you complete statistical tests in the future. So this should be kind of your notes slide for today. These are the kind of things you're going to learn. First off, SPSS is a statistical analysis package. It helps you maneuver data. It can generate tables and graphs. It completes a lot of statistical tests. You actually will report this stuff in your manuscripts, not only for this course, but also in the future when you go to grad school and so forth. So if you can tell your graduate schools that you know how to use SPSS and you know the basic statistical tests, then you're going to be well off and it'll look good for your graduate school resumes. So to start SPSS, you got to find a computer with it. You can look on Canvas to see which computers on campus have SPSS. But when you find a computer that has it, you can find it in the Start menu under All Programs, and it's a program by IBM, so look for IBM SPSS Statistics. You see here IBM SPSS Statistics, not just SPSS Statistics. Or an easier way would just be to double-click directly on an SPSS file, and that's what I want you to do right now. So if you want to follow along here during my lecture, or you can actually follow along while you complete these tasks on your PC there. So please open firstday.save, and this can be found on Canvas. Firstday.save. It'll take a few minutes to load up, and while you do that, I'll do it on my computer here. So when you open up SPSS, it's going to look something like this. You have two windows. You have an editor view window, and you have an output viewer window. So you can see here that I have both here, firstday.save and then an output file. If you click on I usually call them for short, the .sav file, so the editor file here, you'll see this interface looks a lot like SPSS. And this is the data set that you are going to be working with here today. This data set actually comes from a variety of statistics courses that I've taught over the year, where you have, for instance, we have student self-generated ID numbers. You have student gender, which is noted here as 1 for male and 0 for female. You have age, semester, and so forth. So essentially you have a whole bunch of demographic information for a whole bunch of students. If you scroll down here, you'll see that currently, at the time of this recording, I have 118 participants. Which is a pretty good data set, if you ask me. But there'll be more every subsequent semester when I give this questionnaire out to my classes. Just for your reference here, I'll pop up the questionnaire. The questionnaire looks like this, and I will ask you to do this if you want in another class period. But you can see here, we kind of just ask students what's their gender, what's their age, and all of these different demographic information, such as what is your job, do you have any experience in taking research methods or statistics, and so forth. So you can see here that the questionnaire that you see here actually translates to the data set that you see here. Okay, so what we see here is we have our editor view here, where you can literally edit data. And If you scroll down here, or actually if you look down here, you'll see two different views. You have the data view and a variable view. The data view is the interface that you mostly look at in this with this particular window, and it looks like this here. You have specific values. Like I said, here's gender, here's age in years. For participant 1, they are 26 years of age. For participant 19, they are 24 years of age. Now, you also need to learn a little bit more about each of these variables. Okay, so if you click on variable view here, you'll see that each variable is now in a row instead of a column, and it's described here. So for instance, in the name column here, you have the name of the variable. You have the type of variable. For instance, you can have numeric variables, you can have string variables, which simply mean letters. You can have a whole bunch of different types of variables. You will not usually use these, especially in this class. It's going to mostly be numeric for the most part. Don't worry about width or decimals here. That's not very important for the purposes here. What you really need to know is name, label, and values. Okay? So the label here is kind of important because it helps me describe that specific variable because the name is going to be a very short version of it. So for instance, I wrote ID here, but maybe it's better described as student-generated ID. For instance, the name stats course variable is actually, have you taken research methods? Or here I wrote, have you taken experimental design? So the name actually has to be only characters, no spaces. So for instance, if I try to write ID space ID, it's going to say, nope, you can't do that. Variable name contains an illegal character. So there can be no spaces here. If you want a space, you could do underscore, for instance, if you want it here. That'll be allowed, but we're not going to do that. So here, under label, you can have spaces, and it really helps you remember what some of these variables are. And when you work with very expansive data sets, you might need to be reminded of what some of these variable names actually mean. And you can do that with label. Let's just take a minute here and look at gender. If you see gender, and the next important column is values here. So we have gender, and if I click back on data view, you'll see gender is labeled as 0 and 1. And you probably surmise that 1 means female and 1 means male, but which one is which? You can figure that out by clicking on values here and assigning values to your gender. So if I click on values and then click on these 3 little dots, you can see here that I named 0 as female and 1 as male. I'm just going to clear that, and I'll show you how to do that. You might have to do this for a future workshop. So let's just say we'll call the value 0 is going to be now labeled as females or female. Click add, and now the value 1 is going to be labeled as male. Click add, and now you see, you click OK, and then they'll be labeled here. And any output that you have in your output window, which I'll talk about in a minute, it will say male and female. But of course you need to make it numerical in our data set. So really the important points here to recap briefly: we have name, label, and values. Under the variable view, you want to make sure you describe the name, the label, and the values of each variable of interest. Under data view here, you have all of your variables in columns and the specific values that the student or the participant rated on in each cell. Okay, so let's move on here. Next up, okay, at this point, let's try to enter a new column of data. So what I would like you to do is make sure you're in data view, and if you just click on any column and you right click and click on Insert Variable, you have a new variable inserted into that specific column. If you go over and click on Variable View, you will now see that this variable, which is named variable 00002, we can now name it into something new. So what I want to do here, this whole data set so far is actually from students at FAU. So from here on out, there's going to be a lot of Lynn students. So I want to make sure I can differentiate between the FAU and Lynn students. So I'm going to rename this variable as university. Okay? So university is the new name. And for my label, I'm going to say FAU versus Lynn. So that'll help me, that'll remind me of what university that particular participant is attending. But we need to also remember create values. So I'm going to put in 0 will be for FAU students. Click Add. And 1 will be for Lynn students. We'll click Add there. So now, once I click OK, you have a new variable named University, labeled as FAU versus Lynn University, with the specific labels to help you differentiate in the future. If I click on Data View back down here, you'll see here, now this is how I'll enter data. I already told you that all of these data points are FAU students, so I would enter 0 in for all of them. And if it was as well written as Excel, I would be able to drag it down, but I can't. However, you see the point. Do that for every participant. Now, every subsequent participant that I enter into this data set, I would label as a 1 when I enter the data. Okay, so you know some of the basics here. I'm going to get back to my PowerPoint here, and I'll pop this one up. And you'll see here that we learned a little bit so far about editor window and the output viewer in SPSS. Actually, I didn't really show you the output viewer yet, but I'll show you here in a minute. I showed you how to type in data, and now I'm going to show you a few functions. These will be your first functions that you use quite often in SPSS. That's computing new variables and recoding into different variables. So, just for your reference here, you can transform a lot of original variables in SPSS. So sometimes you'll have categorical variables and you want to make them interval or ratio variables and vice versa. So the first thing is computing. Okay, so computing new variables. We call this the compute function. It creates new variables from previously existing variables. Two examples here that I want to show you is, for instance, let's say you have your percentage grade in algebra, in psychology, and history, and you want to compute an average grade. You can do that using the compute function. You could also, for instance, an example here that's more applicable to our data set, we have 4 scores on questions or items, for instance, items 22 through 25, on what I call academic self-efficacy. So, for those of you who aren't necessarily psych majors, self-efficacy is your belief in your ability to complete a task. So academic self-efficacy would refer to your belief in succeeding in academic challenges, academic classes, and so forth. So if I pull my questionnaire back up, you can see here that the last few questions of the questionnaire are items that relate to one's academic self-efficacy. So we have here doing schoolwork on time is very difficult through very easy for me. Getting good grades is very difficult through easy for me. Doing well in math, following instructions from a teacher, all of these kind of tap into this construct that we call academic self-efficacy. So what I want to do is I could, if I label, let me click on back in SPSS, scroll to the top. And if I scroll to the end here, we see a couple variables here, item 22 through 25. We call these the academic self-efficacy questions. So those who circled very difficult in the questionnaire would write a 1 here. Those who circled very easy would write a 4. So a higher score would indicate higher self-efficacy for the first question and the second question, third question, and fourth question. Now what I want to do is find an average self-efficacy, and we're going to use the compute function to find this average academic self-efficacy. So what you want to do is go to transform, compute variable. And now under target variable I want you to write the name of the variable that you're creating, and we're going to call it we'll call it for short. Now remember, you can't have any spaces here because this is the name, not the label. We're going to call it ACADSE. This means academic. SE means self-efficacy. So at this point here, what you want to do is you can see all of the variables in our data set listed here. And I want you to create a numeric expression. So we're going to add the parentheses and find the mean for all of the academic self-efficacy questions here. Remember, you can see them over here in data view. So you have academic self-efficacy. You click on it like I just did and then drag it over. The plus sign. We're going to do the second item here. Add it over. Plus sign. Third item. Add it over. Plus sign. Fourth item, add it over. So you have items 22 through 25 as you see here. And then we want to obviously find the average, so we're going to divide by 4. And when you do that, and you click OK, we're going to get a new value here, a computed value called academic self-efficacy, and it will find the average of the 4 items. Alright, so what you see here is the first thing that will actually pop up is our output view. This is the first time I've described this. The output view will explain everything that you've done in your data editor view. Okay, and you can see here it has a log. I opened up this file. It also looks like my license is going to expire, so I'll have to get that fixed. But everything I do in SPSS will be logged here. For instance, I computed academic self-efficacy by doing this, and I executed it. So this is oftentimes I've seen a few people try to cheat this way, where it has, for instance, your name in here, and you just give another person your output file, and it just still says your name. So this really logs everything, so it's kind of hard to cheat on these workshops, not that you want to anyway. So that's your output view, and you can see here in our data view we have this new value called academic self-efficacy. You can see that the average self-efficacy here is just an average of these 4 values for every participant. And that's how you compute a new variable. Now, let's go back to my presentation here. So we also have the recode function. So the recode into a different variable function changes existing variables. So instead of computing a new column, it changes the column from the old column to a new column. So for instance here, we have age. Okay? Age could be recoded into a categorical value. Maybe at some point you want to see participants who are in early adulthood versus middle adulthood versus old age. But you only have the age for each participant. So if we go back into our data set, I can show you how to compute, or I'm sorry, to recode this. Let's scroll over. Recode this age variable into a categorical variable. So you do that here. We're going to click on transform and recode into different variables. So what we see here is a new pop-up window where we want to change student age. You can see here labeled by student age and its name. This is the old value. Here we want to input the name and label of the new value. So I'm just going to put, I think we're going to go with age group. Age group is going to be labeled as, let's say, adolescence versus young adulthood versus adulthood. Okay, so I'm going to create 3 age groups: adulthood, young adulthood, and adolescence. At that point, I'll click on change, and once you change it, you'll see that the old value is going to be age, the new value is age group. You're not done yet now. You need to specify the age groups. You need to specify the teenagers, the young adults, and adults. So I'm going to click on old and new values here. Okay? So you see here in the new pop-up window we have the name of the old value and the name of the new value here. So, for the old value, for anyone that's aged, let's just say 0 through 19, okay? For age, if they are between 0 and 19, the new value is going to be 1, okay? That's it. All right, we'll label the values in a minute. So, anyone aged 20 to, let's say, 29, we'll call that young adulthood. Okay? Young adulthood, they're going to be labeled as 2. And finally, anyone from 30 through 39 is going to be a 3. So what happens now is if their age is between 30 and 39, they'll be labeled as a 3. If you click continue and you click OK, you're going to see here that we recoded the values in your output viewer. You can see here, so you know exactly what you did. And in our data view, if you scroll to the end, you're going to see a new age group here. Okay? And you'll see most people, if their age was between 20 and 29, they'll have a 2. You'll see here that there's some missing data here. This person is probably either older than 39 or did not enter their age. Ha! They did not enter their age here. Okay? So let's go back over here. Alright. You're not done yet. You should probably label these before you get confused. So let's go over to variable view. We've done this once already. You can see our new variable here, age group. It's labeled as adolescence versus young adulthood versus adulthood, but we have to click on values to label that. Okay. So if the value is a 1, we're going to label that as adolescence. Click add. If the value is 2, we're going to call them young adulthood. Whoops. And if they're labeled 3, this is going to be adulthood. Click OK. So now you have the value, the label, and the name for our new value, or our new variable age group. Click back on data view, and you can see it here. And that's it. Now you can do statistical tests with this. Of course, you don't know the statistical tests yet. You'll learn them in future lectures. Alright, a couple more things I want to show you before we wrap it up here. The first thing is, just like in Microsoft Excel, if you are interested in sorting the data in any specific way, for instance, let's sort age from youngest to oldest. So if you right click on age, and you can either sort ascending or descending, you can see the youngest participants through the oldest participants in order in this data set. So it helps you organize and move around the data a little bit more. Okay. You can also look at, if you want to do a specific test, let's just say for boys and for girls, you can do that as well. So what you need to do is split the file. Okay, so this can be a little confusing, probably the most difficult part of today's lecture. If you look here, I'm just going to sort these, and you can see here that we have about 93 females in this data set and only about 118 plus 7, 25 or so males. Okay, so what if you want to do a statistical test on males and females separately? You don't need 2 data sets. What you need to do is split the file. Okay, so what you'll do here is you'll click on Data, Split File. Okay? And this is cool because you can compare groups. So if you click on Compare Groups and you want to compare groups by gender, student gender, add that in there. And you click OK. Any subsequent analysis here will be split file by gender. Now, you don't know how to do this yet, but let me just show you here. If I look at the, let's see, let's go descriptives. If I want to look at the average age for students, okay, I'm going to get this here. And if you see here, now I haven't showed you this, so don't freak out yet, but we can look at the mean age for females and for males. If I go ahead and turn that Compare Groups option off, split file, and I reset this, so now I took the Compare Groups off, I click OK, and I do it again. If I click on Analyze, you can see here, since I took Compare Groups off, it still looks at the mean age, but for the whole sample. So this is cool if you want to do it for any categorical variables such as gender, political affiliation, religious affiliation, FAU students versus Lynn students, and so forth. Okay. So that's pretty much it for today, and let me go back to our goals page. So I told you a little bit about the different windows in SPSS. So you have the two windows, the editor window and the output viewer. The editor window has data view and variable view. And I showed you a little bit how to move data and transform data, type in data, and so forth. Okay, so luckily this is a video lecture, so if you forget anything, you can follow along in this lecture while you do the workshop. Okay, so workshop 2 can be found on Canvas along with the data set needed to complete the assignment. You're going to be doing a lot of the same things that we did in this lecture, and what you'll need to do is send me 2 files in Canvas, your data editor file, which we'll call the .sav, and your output file. So you'll have to save both of them and upload both of them to Canvas. Alright guys, if you have any questions, you can email me at any time. I'll be here to help. Good luck.